further ado, Chris Chapman, who's one of the leading lights in the Agile community in Toronto and beyond. And
my people.
And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to hand it off now to.
That's probably a wise thing. Okay.
You have your own mic.
I'm wired for sound here. I got two. Is that good enough?
In stereo.
In stereo. No,
Nice.
no less. Okay. All right. So hi, yeah, I'm Chris, and this is the first time that I will be presenting this in quite some time. The last time that I did any public presentation was 2019, September 2019. So it's been a while. And I'm really, really pleased to be among such great and honorable Agilists this evening. This is me. I used to run a meetup called Systems Thinking TO from 2016 to 2019. Martin was very instrumental in us getting off the ground. So that was our first meeting in November 2016. If you want to get in touch with me, there's my details. That's the best way to get me, LinkedIn or via my email. I also have a newsletter, so I'm very much so. I've got a bit of a reputation of being a Deming wonk in the community. So I started writing a newsletter in 2021, so it's on Substack, digestibledeming.substack.com if you want to keep up and learn about some of what we're going to learn about in a little more detail. My aim for tonight is to run the Red Bead Experiment, yes, but I wanted to pivot it towards Agile teams. So I'm tweaking things a little bit. And one of the things that I really wanted to get into was the concept of prediction. I wanted to build on what Jeff had presented in March, where he was talking about ways of forecasting and estimating and some of these statistical methods that he was suggesting. And I thought, oh, great, let's build on that, because that's the whole raison d'etre for Agile, is that we're really crappy at telling people when they're going to get what they ask for and in what condition. So it's going to be angled a little bit in that way. We're going to learn about systems. We're going to learn about variation through this, analytic and enumerative studies if we're lucky. And if there is enough time and interest, I've got a case study, because I can tell you how I consult with this material that you're going to learn. And I have an actual case study of 2 teams at a fully remote company and how I was helping them understand that through the lessons of the Red Bead. So what I used to do when I started Systems Thinking TO meetups is I would put this phrase up. It's from Dr. Deming's 4-day seminars. And he would say, why are we here? And he'd leave a long pregnant pause, because everyone's kind of like wondering, because a lot of them were told to be there by their superiors. But he'd say, we're here to learn, we're here to have fun, and make a difference. And hopefully in that order, that what you're going to learn tonight, you're going to be able to begin to apply almost immediately. And you're going to be able to make a difference in your organization and indeed even in the broader community. So the inventor of this exercise, it's quite old. It dates back to the 1940s. This is W. Edwards Deming. Everybody know who he is? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so if you're not familiar with Dr. Deming, you really, really should, especially if you're in the field of Agile. Because this guy, he's one of the OG originators for a lot of the things that we take for granted right now. You work in iterations, that's a Schuhart cycle. That dates back to his mentor from the 1920s. Deming popularized it, and he taught it to the Japanese in 1950, and largely is responsible for kicking off the miracle in quality that ensued, that had the Japanese overtaking the Americans in terms of quality in the 1980s. So really exceptional guy. He used this to teach very quickly and succinctly some of the things that can go wrong in an organization based on management. So one thing to point out, because I had some guy chastise me on LinkedIn about this. He said, this is all about making managers feel bad. And the only time managers should feel bad is if they come through this and keep doing the same things that they've always been doing. There's no excuse. As soon as you know that there's another way, you should stop. But it exaggerates how managers work, right? So we're talking about management practices. We're not talking about managers' people, because everybody can change and everybody can improve. So I wanted to put that caution out first, that this is all about exaggerating for the purposes of a little bit of entertainment and education. So without further ado, we're going to assume the character. Hi, my name is Chris. I'm the Director of Software Delivery, Agile Software Delivery for the White Bead Corporation. Very pleased to be here. I've been told that we could have a recruiting fair here this evening, and we're going to be looking very shortly at recruiting some people for a urgent upcoming project. Our CEO, you're very, very fortunate to have him with us this evening, is Mr. Jeff Cossaju. He's a very experienced guy. Could everybody just give a hand to the CEO?
That's right. That's right. Mr. Chapman, Mr. Foreman, I'm a little concerned with your take on management. Management is not the problem. We are a very educated and very talented group of people, and you will see that through this activity tonight, just how fantastic we are as a management group. But you go ahead with your activity.
Thank you, sir. I always really appreciate your forthright wisdom and the way that you deliver it to me. It's very helpful and humbling, and thank you. I really appreciate it. So let's move without further ado straight into recruiting. We're going to need 10 people who are going to be able to join us. We need 6 White Bead software developers. They must be of the 10x caliber, so we're not taking 9s, 8s, or 3s. We need 10x developers, and we need 6 of them. Is anybody here feeling like they can do? Ah, right, we've got 1. 2, we've got 2. Please come to the front when you're ready. 3, we've got 3. We got 4. We got 5. 1 spot left for developer. 6. All right. All right. So has everybody got an appropriate, like everybody can see your name tags? I would like you to just come up here. Now we do need as well 2 people who can do QA for us. Great. We got 1. We got 2. 2 QA. So the requirements for these people, just so everybody knows, they got to be able to count to 20 in base 10. And distinguish red from white. All right, so let's have our QAs will be seated right here. That's what? Yeah, it's okay. We'll start there. The White Bead developers, please make your way up over here. I would like you over on this side, just so everybody can see who you are. Okay. Next thing is we need a data analyst, somebody who loves numbers. Yes, data analyst. I see them right there. Come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Wrong. Right, and we need a product owner. Who's going to be product owner? Product owner right here? Okay. All right, so we've all got some very important jobs. I'm going to show people on how these jobs are going to kind of work. So,
Mr. Foreman, before you do that, I noticed that you were making sure that everyone had their names visible.
Yes.
I'm more interested in their productivity, so I've come up with these numbers. If we could just use numbers for each of our software developers, you'll be developer number 1. Okay, there you go. You don't need another identity over that. You'll be number 2. If you can take care of that, please. You're a data analyst. Okay.
Yeah, data analyst doesn't have to do that.
You're product owner, developer. Where are my developers? You just need numbers. You don't need names.
That'll be your order, actually.
Ricardo, there we go. You're going to be number 5, Ricardo. Where's my 6th developer? Excellent. Good job. Thrilled to have you here. All right. Carry on, Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Mr. Cossaju. I really appreciate that. Okay, so data analyst, I'm going to need you nearby, somewhere right here. So I'm going to be showing you how to use our sophisticated data entry tools. Product owner, I'm going to need you to work with the QA people because you're going to be overseeing how well the delivery of beads is going. Actually, bits. We're just using beads as a stand-in. So we're going to start with sprint 0, and we're just going to make sure that we understand everything that we need to do. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to demonstrate for you about how we are going to proceed with delivery of our materials. So this is known as a 5x10 array. You will notice that it has got indentations, and this is a RESTful API, and you're going to be passing this 5x10 array into the receptacle here, the RESTful API, and you're going to be putting it in. And it's very important, by the way, that you put this in precisely at a 44-degree angle. This is how we've calibrated the system. It's very, very important. So 44-degree angle going in, and then you're going to pull it out at 41, because we've actually found over time that 41 really works better. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate what this will actually kind of look like. Now, the object here is not to have defects. Defects are represented by the red bits. We want white bits as much as possible when we're passing them to our customer. So what's going to happen is you're going to take this, for example. We've gone 0 days without an industrial accident. Back to work we go. Okay, so it's going to come over here. And what's going to happen is, independently, you're going to be looking at this. This is why you've got 2 sheets. So you're going to write down developer 1 through 6 in these slots here. And what's going to happen is it's going to be presented to you, and I want you to do independent counts, and I want you to put it in that box if we were doing it for real. Okay, so right there you would write, so we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like 10, but I don't want you to converse. I want you to just do the count. And then what's going to happen is it's going to get passed to the product owner. You have final say, right? So if there is a dispute, it is up to you to reconcile the dispute amongst the QA, and don't be afraid to lay the boots, right? And like that, we just don't waste any time here. So what's going to happen is you're going to come back, developers. You're going to pass this off, and then it's going to go to the next individual. Your job is going to be this. So when we go into production, well, actually, you know what? We're going to wait after production. It's going to make it a little bit easier because this is just blinking on and off just a little bit too messily. Let me go back. So what's going to happen is after, you're going to hear a report, and you are going to note it down, and it's going to get entered into the system, okay? So we're going to make sure we've got triplicate checking. We're going to make sure that we know precisely what the defects are. And actually, we have to make sure that we denote on this, by the way, that we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we know everybody who's there. So everybody knows your order. You're going in numerical order. So here at the White Bead Corporation, we are a high-performance company. We believe that if you are willing to work hard, success is guaranteed. And promotions, abilities to make a lateral move, they're all open to you as long as you are willing to put forth your best efforts. I understand that since I've come to AgileTO, all of you are above average. I don't think anybody here is anybody below average, by the way. I didn't ask that. You? Number 6. Well, I kind of figures, right? He's number 6, so kind of self-selected into that group. Wow. So anyway, we have some, HR came to us, by the way, and we had a contest and we designed some posters, and you'll see them in your team room, but we want you to think about them. Work smarter, not harder, right? Like that's a general philosophy and value we have here. Also, your work is your masterpiece. Would you sign it? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sounds very good. I hope so. Okay. For everybody that's in the audience, you each should have a card as well, so you can play this game at home. You can actually record on your own cards how things are going. I want you to note that when you are, whoops, let me just go back here, go over here. Yep, I'm going to go back to that other one. You can note the totals, and you can know what the cumulative average for each day is, so that you can actually keep us honest. If you see us making a mistake, please shout it out. Right, so thanks to an incident that we had at Gatineau, Ottawa Agile Tour 2014, we've devised a new HR policy, and it is a retention policy based on the Hotel California. Of course, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. There is no quitting. Now that you've joined the crew, you can't resign, but we sure as hell can fire you. So please keep your nose sharp. So, one final message. I found it inspirational to maybe deliver a pep talk of sorts, and then I watched Ted Lasso, and I saw that all I needed to do was give you a sign for inspiration. All you need to do is believe. You just need to believe that you can do this, and we're really looking forward to seeing how you do for your jobs today. So let's begin Sprint 1 production. We're going to go in numerical order. Developer number 1, please approach, and we want to see that you're doing good form. Everybody pay attention. Make sure that he's entering at 44 degrees and that he is exiting at 41 out of the API. Okay. So what product owner? Product owner? Ms. Product owner. What is the defect count? I need to hear it audibly, please. 9 dismissed. We're going to hear that. Okay. Uh-oh. They dropped another bead? Oh, jeez, this is just terrible. Well, you know what? I come prepared. Do you remember what color it was?
Somebody else mentioned it, and I trusted them.
Is it a white bead? Well, there we go. So, so yes, you can start right away. We don't want to hold up in production. Yeah, you're going to record that too. And we need to hear from the product owner so that our data. 9? Okay, I'll note that down. Yeah, they're working it out. Sprint 1 is working, shaking things out, you know. It's how this kind of thing works. You don't seem to be exiting at 41 degrees. So, sorry? 12. 12. Wow. Wow. Well, we're getting the jitters worked out. Sprint 1 is going to be pretty forgiving. 10. 10. Goodness gracious. Okay. Next up, this developer looks like a 10x developer. You can tell. Look at the poise, the grace, the expertise. Withdrawing at 41 degrees. Did everybody pay attention? 8. See? Top-notch development right there. Okay, so here's our below average guy. Let's see how he does. 41 degrees, man. 41. What have we got? So what is QA telling us? Is there any white in there?
Easier to have the white ones versus the red ones.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Full average.
Don't worry, it's day 1. It's day 1.
Thank you. We have so many bugs.
So 18. Okay. Wow. Okay. So we're going to move to our super sophisticated data entry system that was developed by, I think it was the nephew of the VP of IT. Here we go. The best $250 that you could spend right here. All right, so data analyst, I want you to observe how we're going to do this. So, well, don't worry, we've got a tool for doing it. You get a tool. Yeah, okay, so here we go. So let's look at this. So we got 9. We got 9. Oops. 10, 8, and 18. Yep. Okay. Wow. So our sprint burn down is showing that. So we start with 1,200 points of work. We're expected to deliver 300 points of work per sprint. And here's how we're doing so far. We delivered 234 points. Yikes. 66 escape defects for a 28% count there. That's really remarkable. But I do see developer number 5. You did an exceptional job. You got the best defect count for day 1 that I've seen in many a day. So, congratulations on that. I need you. Where is my CEO? Oh, there. Oh,
Yes, Mr. Foreman.
Snazzy, sir.
Excellent. I see you're through sprint 1.
Yes.
Great.
I have a top performer to actually send to you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I love top performers, above average top performers. Excellent. Please, would you send him over?
Okay. You're very fortunate. Please.
Oh, resource number 5. So nice to meet you. Excellent. Come stand over here so everybody can see you as a top performer. I don't want to make too much of a deal. I don't want everyone else to be too jealous here, but I do want to present you with the Sprint 1 award for outstanding performance in lowest defect count. As an individual developer, you are the model that we are looking for here at the Red Bead Corporation. Please keep up this work and be proud of the work that you've done. This is for you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 5. Thank you, number 5. Thank you, number 5. Excellent. Resource number 5, can you please return to the production floor? You can take that one. Don't make a big deal about it, though, to the others. We don't want them to feel like it was, don't want them to feel slighted. We care about people here at the White Bead Corporation, very much so. They're very important resources for us. Yes.
Would you like me to handle?
Yes, Mr. Foreman.
Okay.
If you could please take care of the others.
Okay. All right. It's my unfortunate duty. This is always such a sad part of my job. I hate it. Well, please approach. I'm going to have to. I mentioned we are a high performance organization. No, number 6. Number 1, you're fine. We're going to be putting you on a performance improvement plan. I want you to try and do the best that you possibly can. You can see you've got a great team here of peers. They're all willing to support you on how well you can deliver your 5x10 array of bits. We're really looking for an improvement. Just don't consider this personal. Consider this an opportunity.
Awesome.
Okay. There we go. That's great. Thanks. Moving on. You know, manager's work is never done. All right. So we've had a look at this. But one of the things that we came to realize, so we've done the review in retro, we realized that we made a mistake. We weren't very clear about our setting expectations for you. So we've just attended, the CEO and I, we just attended a conference where we learned from Jeff Gathelf. Everybody know Jeff Gathelf? He's really crazy about OKRs. And he says, this is the way, the truth, and the light, and the way that we can really improve management within our company. So we've decided to give you an OKR. Your OKR, everyone else has different ones, but yours, bless you all, is to get 3 defects or less. 3 defects or less. It's very easy, well communicated, will flow throughout the organization. We think that that's going to be very easy to pursue. So we're going to begin with your second sprint. I think you've warmed up, you're ready. I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to remind you, work harder, not smarter. I mean, that's a pretty catchy, pithy phrase. Your work is your masterpiece. Would you sign it? We know number 6 definitely didn't want to sign that last masterpiece. But I think everyone else is doing pretty well. We're improving, we're going well. But we've got some additional motivational posters for you. Defects cost everyone. Don't let them cost your job. Quality starts with me. Remember that. It's very important. And also, haste makes waste. Always follow the process. It's very, very important that you follow the process. We spend a lot of time and money developing it, and it helps safeguard your results. You follow the process properly, good things can happen. It's going to be fantastic. Don't worry. It's going to be great. Let's move straight away into let's move that thing. There we go. That's management for you. Look at how well I'm taught to do this. Sprint 2, production. All right, so again, please proceed. Excuse me? What part of tilting the array, the RESTful API did I say? I said 44 in, 41 out. I just said haste makes waste. Always follow the procedure. And what's the product owner? What was 7? 7. That's our guy. He's doing better. 11. Oh. Developer number 2. That's not. Are you putting forth best efforts? Okay. Developer 3. I'm gonna need to have a word with you. Developer 3, you're on probation. How many? Sorry? See what happens? See what happens? All right. We've got developer 4. Oh, very efficient. This is our guy to watch. That counts as a defect if there's one missing. 11. Okay. All right, here's our award-winning 10x developer. Are we having problems at home? It's okay. We have an employee assistance program you can avail yourself of. 14? Oh my God. This is sprint 2. Okay, here, I'm pulling for you, man. On your PIP, I am pulling for you. I've talked to HR, there are good things in your... Oh! Okay, I am afraid. What part of following the procedure said that you could go and pick things around? No excuse?
No excuse.
Okay, well, I've got the 18, please. Okay, I'm sorry, developer 6, I'm gonna have to let you go.
Okay.
You were on a PIP, you didn't follow the procedure, I'm really, really sorry. I need a new developer number 6. Yes, please step forward, ma'am. We're looking forward to seeing what you can do. All right, so let's go back to the data analysis so we can do the reporting. Let's see what we got here. Go back to our super duper system. All right, so what have we got?
7.
Okay, 7.
11.
11.
14.
14.
11.
11. 14.
18.
18. Wow. So our defect count skyrocketed. It's now 33% of sprint. We've got 75 red beads we've increased. Not looking good. We still have 741 points of work to deliver. This is rather dire. What do you think? Not a very good situation. Good thing you're in data analysis. Believe me, we don't fire you. Very important. Well, you guys, I swear to God, you play such an important role in this company. You picked it very right. So, yeah, so we looked at it and there was some concern. All right, so we've decided to try something else. Tried and true method. Maybe if we offer some kind of cash incentive, award, or bonus, we'll be able to get better performance. So, for the first person who is able to achieve their OKR, nice $20 bill. We've also been speaking to Sir, or where is Sir? Oh, there's Sir. He's just come back from French Polynesia. He's very, very distressed about that. He had to be laid off.
He's busy in executive suit now. Yes, Mr. Foreman.
So we went to that lean conference in between.
Oh, yes, in between meals. I mean, yes.
And we had a lean process efficiency expert come and spend time with us. And they suggested that the reason that we're having some problems is, they said the OKR and the cash bonus idea is fantastic, but they said the one way that we could optimize our system is to do something called single piece flow. So here's how we're going to do it. I would like to have all 6 developers. I'm going to go from 1 through 6, and they're going to stand right in front here. So I'm going to have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. All right, so what the lean process efficiency expert told us to do is basically you can do this scooping. We're going to get QA. They told us to move QA up to the front. It's a brilliant idea. So QA, could you come up here as well? Sure. And we're going to be optimizing. So what's going to happen is you're still going to be doing the recording, but it's going to be done as it goes. So developer 1, all you've got to do is scoop. They're going to be right here to do the accounting. And then product owner, we just need to hear the count. and then it's going to move to the next person, the next person, next person, next person, and done. Right? So we're going to see if lean optimization is going to actually help us achieve something.
Mr. Foreman,
yes.
it's worth mentioning that the lean consultant made it very clear that this would improve the effectiveness of our process by reducing one of those 7 wastes. This eliminates the motion on transportation of moving the API over here to QA by embedding QA directly with the team. We're very sure that that this is going to have a positive impact.
Oh, this is fantastic. Do you think maybe we should add an additional table? Everybody's kind of crowded here. Maybe we should just pull out an additional table.
We've got one here, Mr. Foreman.
Oh,
Mr. Foreman.
Oh, you got one right there?
We don't have the budget for another table right now, but we can repurpose this one.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, let's do that.
That allows the resources to have a little more space.
Okay, all right. So before you move into production, one thing that I want to remind you about is that we're going to have performance reviews end of day tomorrow. So please work as if your job depends on it, because it probably does. All right, so we're going to move into sprint 3. I'm going to remind you, work smarter, not harder. Your work is your masterpiece. Would you sign it? Defects cost everyone. Don't let them cost your job, especially now. Always follow the process. Haste makes waste. And also, we got this great poster from HR. They said that this might help. Be stronger than your excuses. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. That's fantastic. All right, so let us move into, oh yes, we've got the OKR bonus. Let's move straight into production. So,
Mr. Foreman, just before we do,
yes.
I'm a little concerned that QA could be blocking the view of the senior management team who are observing these and yourself. Perhaps we could get a chair for them in that space.
Perfect.
Would that be okay?
That would be fantastic. Sir, this is why I invite you to come to these offsites. You're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, you know, here, Mr. Foreman, here at the White Bead Corporation, we truly care about our resources and want to provide them all of the tools to be successful.
Absolutely.
We have the budget for the chair.
That was a repurpose of chairs.
had them at 20
And in the future, could you please direct your comments to the foreman?
Okay, that's better. I was you once. He did it to me too. All right, so let's begin. Let's start with sprint 3 production, please. Developer 1. That's your
Three, and one extra piece.
Developer 1 is the first to win the award. You really do get that.
What if you have the time?
No, it's the first person. You think we're made of money in this company? My God.
Seven. Lean is perfect. 12.
Oh dear. Can we have a look at data analyst?
Eight.
All right, so we're going to move into review and retro. So let's get this entered into the system. Let's see what we've got here. Into scorecard, our system. So let's have a look. We've got 3,
11, 7, 12, 8.
and we've got 8. Looks like it. Yeah. Audience, keeping us honest. Nobody disagrees. Yep. Okay. All right. So, Mr. CEO, Mr. Cossaju, the final results are in. here is what we're looking at. You'll see that the green cells represent the developers who had the lowest defect counts, and the red cells represent those with the most defect counts. How would you like to proceed, sir?
Well, I hate to do this, but we clearly have some performers who are, in spite of them supposedly putting forward their best efforts and supposedly above average, 3 of them clearly are not, Mr. Foreman.
How is the customer feeling about what we're delivering to them?
We are actually at risk of losing this contract. We are very close. We do not have a happy customer. In fact, we not only have the customer complaining to us, we have regulators paying attention to us now because of the poor performance of you, all of you. And Mr. Foreman, I think we need to make some drastic changes here if we're going to retain this customer and retain our business and stay profitable for our shareholders.
Absolutely. So would you like me to proceed with?
I think you know what to do.
Okay. All right. So if I could have developers 3, 5, and 6, please. 3, 5, and 6. 5 was our.
Does this count?
I'm going to put that little star there because you received that award. I don't understand what happened. So developers 3, 5, and 6. The figures speak for themselves. Haven't done really well.
But I just joined the. I don't want to take ownership of the developer.
I'm sorry, you joined the team. You became developer 6.
It's unfair. How do you do that? Numbers don't lie.
The numbers don't lie. We have.
I was developer 6 in the 3rd sprint. Before that, I was not developer 6.
This has never happened before? This is the first time?
First time what?
That's okay. That's okay.
No.
I'm truly sorry. Would you ask the other developers to take your place? Would you be willing to throw them under the bus? Who should we throw under the bus? Should we throw developer 4 under the bus? Developer 4, would you like to go under the bus? No, you're not going under the bus. It's not, no. Mr. Cossage has entrusted me to make sure that I do an appropriate job. This is what I have to do. Developers 1, 2, and 4 must move on. I'm sorry.
Mr. Foreman, a word, please.
Yes.
I was just speaking with HR.
Yes.
And we actually like the potential of developer number 6. We think she might have an opportunity here, but I do have to tell you, developer number 2 has consistently had a weak amount of performance.
You could be right. 9, 11, 11.
Yeah, not what we expect here at the White Bead Corporation. That is not an above average performer.
All right. So developer 2 we're gonna gas developer 2.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
All right. Okay. Well, you know best, sir. Thank
Developer
you.
3 is improving though.
Well, let's have a look over at the graph here. So developer 3 technically is improving, but really had a really tough go in sprint 2. Developer 4, developer 1 got the award. Everyone should pay attention to developer number 1. I like the cut of his jib. He's a very good worker. Everyone should follow that lead. We're at 493 on our burn down. Our escape defect rate has come down. That's good, 21%, so we're doing well. So we're going to push through. Miracle of modern management is to take the best people and double their efforts. So you are obviously top performers who are quite capable of taking on an additional case load. So we're going to make sure that we enter you into these 3 columns here because you're going to be progressing on to the top-notch development. So,
Mr. Foreman, just before you carry on, now that we've eliminated the 3 underperforming individuals, it occurs to me that when I look at the results of this team, that the incentive we had, monetary incentive, actually worked and improved their performance.
Absolutely.
So I think it would make sense for this next iteration if you got out another monetary reward. If you could just grab that out of your wallet, please, for these developers, that would be wonderful. That clearly made the difference.
Sir is always so kind. Well, I'll tell you what, it can come out of my payroll or my discretionary spend. Okay, so developers, let's see, who are we saying goodbye to? We're definitely saying goodbye to not 6. We're saying goodbye to 5, to 2, and, or no, 5, 4, and 2. 5, 4, and 2?
5, 3, and 2.
Wait a minute.
5, 2, and 3.
5, 2, and 3?
You better do the work on the red.
All right, there we go. So you've got double shifts ahead of you that are going to be coming up. Okay, so let's go back. Man, we got such high hopes and expectations for you guys. It's going to be fantastic. So we've completed our performance reviews. One thing I forgot to mention is that we are a proud member of Canada's top 100 employers for 2022. And we sure as hell didn't get that way by being stocked on our employees. That's a rating and ranking system, and by hell, we can rate and rank with the best of them. We've just seen that. That's why we are in Canada's top 100 employers. We've also had, for immediate release, the press release that has gone out. Dateline Toronto, May 10th, 2023. White Bead Corporation announces restructuring and layoffs. Basically, you've heard from our CEO that we've had the unfortunate incident of having to release some of our employees. It's not just particular to this team. We've had to do a reduction of headcount throughout the organization in order to meet our targets. A statement which I will read from the CEO. He takes full responsibility for the challenges that the White Bead Corporation has faced in recent years, including this debacle. We have made difficult decisions that have impacted the lives of our employees, and I want to express my deepest regret to those who have been affected. Our goal is to ensure that we are a stronger, more stable company going forward, and we believe the changes are necessary to achieve that. And so that has just gone out on the press wire, and we are closely monitoring how our stock price is now behaving with response to this news. Mr. CEO, how does our customer feel right now? What is their mood?
Well, as I mentioned, Mr. Foreman, both our customer and regulators are very concerned about our lack of performance so far. But with keeping our top performers on the team, they have been very, very hopeful in giving us one last chance in order to be able to deliver on the expectations that they have hired us for. And so I'm going to speak to each of you directly. I am counting on you to come through. Do not let me down. Take pride in your work. When you come up, really focus on not producing defects. Very important.
Yep. Follow the lead of developer number 1, star performer. It's very clear that we made a grievous error on day 1. Sprint 1. All right, so let's move. We've got the usual motivations: work harder, work smarter, not harder. Your work is your masterpiece. Quality starts with you. Haste makes waste. Please pay attention. This is really important. And we've got another message for you. Good things happen to those who hustle. Please do your best hustle. We're looking forward to seeing what you can do for us. Your OKR achievement bonus is still going to be on the table, thanks to Sir. It's right there.
Mr. Foreman, one other thing occurs to me when we attended that Lean conference. They talked a lot about going to Gemba and management by walking around. And I think one of the ways we can ensure better quality is if you perhaps are observing more closely and walking around while the resources are performing their tasks.
Stroke of genius, sir. I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. That's why you get paid the big salary. Okay. All right. So let us, I'm going to make sure that we are set up correctly then. All right. Developer number 1, please. Everybody pay close attention to how developer 1 works. You're going to go in twice. You're going to do a double shift. Make sure that the product owner is able to see as well as QA.
Are you watching? Okay.
7.
7. Go. You can do it. You're on for a double shift. Yep. 7 is not. Like we expected a little bit better from our star performer.
Right.
12. Oh dear.
What happened to the money?
Maybe I got to make it a little more prominent. See that? See that?
That worked.
See? Wow. Amazing. Lower defect count.
6.
6. Everybody pay attention. Look closely at how He is, oh,
6.
consistent results. Consistent results.
No. 6.
Well, we're consistent. Not consistently great, but consistent.
4.
Oh, bravo. Sir, you were absolutely right.
You don't get to my position by being wrong too often.
Unbelievable. All right, so let's have a look. Let's have a look here. Let's go. Let me see here. I don't know if this is going to be enough to save our bacon, but we're going to see. Okay, so what do we got? Yep.
Double shift reduce the productivity.
Well, we managed to reduce our escape defect count substantially as a percentage of sprints. That's fantastic, 16%. But I don't know, Mr. CEO, what is the customer saying? We've done everything we possibly can.
Well, you know, unfortunately, this supposed above average willing worker that we hired is clearly, overall, we ended up hiring 6 not so above average workers, as it would seem. The client is canceling our contract, Mr. Foreman. We are going to have to shut down this division because of the poor quality and the poor output of this team. It is unfortunate, but it is business, and unfortunately, the client is not happy with us. And we now have a SOX audit to figure out what is happening from the regulator as well.
I've got a soft landing, right?
Well, you managed to keep the $20 that you didn't have to give out last spring. Let's call that even.
Oh man. Okay. Sorry, guys. We're packaging you out. Please see payroll and HR on your way out of the building. White Bead Corporation is going into receivership. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, I will make sure that you are able to find a role in another organization as well. Data analyst? Absolutely. We will look after you. Absolutely.
These are the developer requirements. So,
Oh, right.
yeah, we kept one. Kept one item on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. Okay, so how was that experience?
Pretty intense.
Pretty intense, right? Yeah.
It's really very competitive.
Where's the microphone?
I got it.
Was it Cineplex?
Who was it?
We got some stories here, potentially. Let him follow up after.
So it was pretty intense. And the time he came to say, okay, the time you said, okay, developer 6 is going to be, he has to go, it felt literally that I had to go and fight for myself. It's like,
Yeah.
so I was literally feeling very competitive.
Yeah,
Like,
so you felt like standing up for yourself, right?
yeah, I just felt like standing up for myself at that point.
Yeah.
I felt that it's unfair.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. Absolutely. So there, when Dr. Deming used to run this, one time he did, and there was we'll call her Anne, a participant named Anne, and she expressed these kinds of sentiments. Like she came up to him afterwards and expressed pretty much what you're saying, and he said, "Write this down," and she did. She wrote a paragraph or 2 down, and it ended up in one of his books. It was so profound because she was talking about how it can seem to be unfair just in a game. But how many times is what happens in this game being played out in our organizations? It's happened to me. When I worked for Microsoft Consulting Services, I was given the CTO's award because I had developed an internal wiki for sharing information with consultants in the field. And then we went into a downslide in the business and I couldn't get gigs to work on it. So I got put on a PIP. I was on a PIP for 6 months and I could not achieve what they wanted me to achieve. And you feel it. You feel it. It really hurts. Please.
I just thought that was Cineplex. That was some good acting. That was really good. Well, that's all I had.
Yeah? Oh, I thought you had some.
I'm not really new. It's my first time coming, so came
Welcome.
to learn kind of how it works. So yeah, that was pretty informative and fun. So
Cool, thank you. Any other comments or observations about what you saw? Anna? This is the worst Price is Right ever.
It's enough, Mr. Foreman.
I found it interesting how developer 6, number 2, or 2.0, developer 6, felt like she had to stand up for herself. The system was the same, and yet one was 18 and the other was 6, right? 8, and 8 took ownership to say, I did better. The system that was built exactly the same way. I'm curious what others think.
Developer 6. How did you feel? So tell me what it was like for you.
I think taking like a deeper think in terms of playing this out into reality. Sometimes you're in a job, and you're doing your thing. You think you're doing a good job, and you do a good job, and a few things happen, and you don't do a good job. Quickly that can kind of change. And so it's interesting because we're all 10x developers, and sometimes you're not 10x, and it's just one of those things that I think that just comes to realization that there's sometimes under control over certain situations. I think that for developer number 6, that became very clear. You have absolute control over whether you're amazing or pull off easy.
Yeah.
There was no focus on what was delivered, it was all about defects. As a product owner, I wanted to focus on what is delivered, what value we delivered, but nobody even checked that. It was all about defects.
That never happens, right? Good point, thank you.
So I want to say 2 things. First of all, it was a completely randomized process, right? They were just reaching in and grabbing the beads, and yet when somebody tried to manipulate, use their hands and get a better result, they were reprimanded, which I see happen all too often. But I do have to share a similar story. I was with a client, and the product owner had chosen the company and hired people to do their software development. And the tool, it was an audit tool, and it was picking up millions of dollars in overbilling from different organizations. And then they replaced their SAP system, and it destroyed all the data. And these poor developers, they were trying to sort bad data, and they couldn't fix the data. They couldn't get that. The product owner actually stood up in a meeting and said that they were not working hard enough, that they didn't have the skills. Hugely demoralized team. Side note, as a Scrum Master, and Scrum Masters don't do anybody any good. But, I mean, it does happen in the real world. And ironically, they, for 2022, the system won an award.
Yeah.
It was presented in September of 2022. For 2021, all the money they found, and that's when we decided to close down the project. Because we couldn't fix it. But they all the senior guys went to that, including the PO, went to the award ceremony to get their award for this great product they produced.
That's
lots of money for a year.
That's a great story. That is fantastic. That is such a train wreck. I have a friend who took an Ivy MBA a few years ago, and he said for their project, I said, well, we've got some choices. One of the choices is to design an SAP system. And I said, don't take that one. Just for the love of all that's holy, don't take that one. Yes, sir.
So I think for me, it's about psychological safety within the team. Because first, once the CEO actually started coming into the team, you could see the faces of the developers in particular, the motivation started dropping, and also, I mean, when there's no motivation within the team, what do we deliver? What I also saw there was, Mr. Foreman could have at least been able to check quote unquote checkmate the CEO to say, okay, let's try to have that conversation outside the team, right? Because every time he comes through to complain, everybody feels like,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's absolutely true. Were we actually functioning? You said you had a team. Was that a team really?
No.
Not even close, right? I had this experience with a customer at Bell where I came into a room and there was like, it was like this, like a group of people. And when I inquired as to what they did and who they reported to, I said, oh, you're not a team. You're just a group of people who happen to be co-located working coincidentally from time to time on the same thing, but not really. So even though we had a system that was pretty confined here, this work really was not representative of teamwork, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a stand-in. It's a stand-in. It's not really development. Like, because what intellectual effort is going on in here? None. Zero. It's all mechanical. But come on.
I guess what I find fascinating about this is that even though it is transparently random, we still take it very seriously. And if, you know, what does that say about human psychology, that kind of randomness still kind of sways us, and we still think of it as being real in a very potent way. And that randomness informs so much, and yet we see patterns where there aren't any. We see these things as being real and driven by our efforts, even when they're just completely due to random chance. And it goes to your story, Chris, about the circumstances where you're up and down the board and then down through no fault of your own, and suddenly you're on a performance improvement plan, and totally random.
Yep.
And then add in the human psychology of management, where people feel like their position in the hierarchy sets them above others, and it just amps all of that up. And I find it really, really interesting. This model kind of underscores how that hierarchy can really get in there and just juice up that whole, taking the randomness seriously and punishing.
I like what you're saying here, because this is actually what the experiment is designed to illuminate, is that the system takes on a life of its own. And you're going along for a bit of the ride. You don't have as much agency or control sometimes on how that system works. And you're going to take some knocks. So I had a senior manager at Bell that I worked with a number of years ago. She approached me one day with the hardest thing she ever had to do, which was hand out performance appraisals for her team. And she said, my team plus their hump, they all deserve exceeds this time. But HR tells me they're not allowed to distribute exceeds because it's got to go into distribution first. And she was beside herself about this. What do I do? I said, well, everybody knows it's a game, right? Because I did the Red Bead with her in 2015. I said, you understand, it's a game. Fine. So what ended up happening was she meted out the discipline with a soft blow because she was able to come in afterwards and give on the spot awards to cushion it and explain why they weren't getting exceeds. But then what happened one day was it happened to her. So one day I get a call and she says, come out to Mississauga to the campus. I do. And she's like, I'm ready to quit. And so I had to kind of like, I talked to her a little bit off the ledge and I said, it's your choice what you want to do, because you're doing a lot of good here, but you know it's not personal. And she says, I know, but it feels personal.
Chris, you made a reference a moment ago while we were playing the game to having an issue happen in Ottawa with an above average willing worker. What happened with that, and how might it be related to the topic we're discussing right now?
So we had a very clever participant, a young lady, and we were up on a stage because we were like in a kind of like a theater. And she realized after sprint 2 that the game was rigged. So she approached, she looked at it and said, I'm not doing this. This is dumb, this is stupid, I quit. And of course, you got to play this. This happens. I know that this happens every time you run this. You've got to be prepared for this. I said, you can't quit, you're fired. And so luckily, Jason Little was in the audience, and he was able to say, I'll go. Because, you know, Jason's up for just about anything. So he swooped in and became, like you, the replacement developer. He played the role with the plum. I think he ended up getting some of the lowest defect counts.
You wrote a blog post after the end of that. What was that blog post called? Was it called "You Fired Your Most Responsible Employee"?
Oh, thanks for reminding me. Chris Avery was in there. Yeah. Yeah, so Chris Avery was there. Does everybody know Chris Avery, the responsibility process? Yeah. So he was sitting in the audience and he piped up and she literally stormed out of the auditorium, dump, right out. And he's like, you just let your most responsible person go. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. But look, I've got Jason. Jason's even more responsible.
We can talk about how that plays out in the real world, where we tend to play the game of the system in order to be successful, in order to get promoted, in order to get to that next thing, instead of addressing the fact that the system might be rigged against us and we might not actually be producing what we want to. And I think that was one of the things that you called out in that blog post that I thought was great at the time. I probably still think it's great. I just haven't read it in 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a while. I forgot to.
Oh, hold on. There was one over here, and then we'll come to you.
So the other interesting fact is also the correlation that usually management does. You know, when we brought in the lead improvement, and surprise, it works.
Did it work though?
It worked.
Did it?
Everybody got candy also.
Seriously, did the $20 on the table result in those 3 beads?
No, but it's
So be careful.
No, what I'm saying, it's the management plays it. That's a correlation.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how it works.
So
You can
Deming had a-
really see that in our.
Deming had a famous expression about that. Well, he actually got from Gypsy Randy. Don't confuse coincidence with cause and effect. But we have superstitious learning that happens in organizations where, well, look, it worked. Yes.
I want to add to your story with the performance reviews.
Yes.
So this is something that I heard from our QA manager in Kitchener, and she told me how one of her testers came to her and said, I know how the performance reviews work. I can see how they translate into my bonus. If I bust my chops and I make your top performer at $750, it's not worth it to me. So I'm going to play average. You want to keep me? I love this thing.
Ooh, what a clever.
Yes.
Clever. Wow. That's kind of actually really clever and smart that she intuited how the system operates. We had something similar happen at Microsoft as well, where no one ever wanted to become a senior consultant or a principal because your workload just increased, double, triple. You got a marginal kick on the bonus, and you were responsible for just about everything that goes wrong. So a lot of guys would do anything to keep below that threshold. And then it ended up with people getting fired because they wouldn't take it for so long.
Same happens at Bell actually, because a lot of technicians don't want to move beyond the unionized environment. As soon as you move to management, you got a target on your back because management is so much easier to let go.
Yeah. Yes, Tom.
Have you ever had a group of individual developers in this model rebel? So one distracts you, and then the others go and cherry pick away.
Oh yeah. Wile E. Coyote stuff happens all the time.
I was running this at a very analytic organization, incredibly competitive organization, and I was doing it with their HR department. All of the senior HR folks were sitting in the room with me, and I was running this, and all of a sudden, the QA manager says, 3 defects. And I kind of went, what? Like, it caught me off guard, and I look over, there were not 3 defects. And they were willing to cheat. Now, I pointed out the fact that how willing they were to cheat in a game that had no impact. How do you think that's going to translate into the job when they had a huge pay for performance, when thousands of dollars are on the line? And they said, oh, nobody would do that in real life.
God, I have so many stories like that.
That was the VP of HR that said that. That was the VP of HR that said no one would cheat in real life in order to get, anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is a very important point. Bonuses and money and incentives work. Don't take away from this that they don't work or that they don't have any causality. Sometimes they work in spite of themselves, and also they work. You can actually see, you begin to narrow down to the individual. So one of the first things that when I get a trouble call from a potential customer, they say, oh, yeah, the team's not working well, First question I ask is, how proximate are you to a performance appraisal? Is it coming in, or did they just finish? Because you will notice that a team starts to go very wacky when it all
go against you because you have so many debts who are individually contributing but not contributing as a team.
Yeah, they start to pull. Yeah, that's exactly it. They go in separate directions.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get any cooperation. They're very dour, you know, they get very taciturn, you know, it's not
Everybody wants to lose $20, please.
It didn't happen. Did developer one take his $20?
No, I went over there.
That belongs to developer one. What'd you do?
It was, let's get back to the debrief. One of the things that I've observed, I've run this a few times, some with Chris, sometimes with Ed. One of the things that has almost happened every time, it didn't happen today, but when that money goes on the table, productivity almost always slows down.
Yep.
As developers try so hard, and I mean, you don't stand a chance, really, but they're trying so hard, and it actually gets slower. And money actually has an opposite effect that you would expect it to. Performance slows down, and the results don't change because it is a random bucket of beads, but performance slows down as a result.
Yeah. So one question.
Okay, sorry.
Oh yeah, oh sorry, please go ahead.
I was actually going to say the same thing because sometimes the challenge we might have in the team is, when we know there's a monetary award, so to say, is it the money for me? Do I actually want the money? As compared to, guys, if you actually deliver real good or we land product to the client, you guys can take a day off. A day off is worth more than anything compared to the money. Of course, nobody works for charity except charity is their boss's name, or my boss's name is not charity. But still, a day off is 100% worth it. 100% worth it.
Got Martin next.
Government can't tax that time.
Martin was next, I thought. Yep.
There were two hands, I didn't see which was first.
Yep.
So, I almost feel like, so obviously it's not the first time this experiment's been done, so I've had some years to reflect on this, plus this afternoon. I feel like the team portion is a bit of a red herring.
Yep.
To the whole thing, right? Because, you know, if you look at Deming's message, he's talking to management here. He's not talking to the Agile community, he's not talking to the workers, he's actually, his conversation is with management here. And, you know, one of the big things there is, obviously in the experiment, there's a huge source of variation there with the way the beads are being sorted. And so, you know, there is no attempt to actually manage for that source of variation. That's why we have the same results going over and over again. So, like, I guess that's a question, but more of a comment. First, I love your 2023 refresh with some OKRs and all the other things. That was really good. But I feel like one more thing could really make the 2023 version of this even more powerful. And like, as we think about that conversation with managers, part of their inaction is not because they're evil or uninterested, but they don't have the tools and the means to actually solve problems, right? So I think that if there was another round where leaders are equipped to basically spot that variation that's taking place and experiment with some improvement to that variation, and as a result it's a happy ending, there is a real message there, right? So, you know, moving away from this, you know, shame on you for being such a jerk manager for the last 20 years, there's a path that can make this a lot better, right? And I think that's something.
Well, so let me answer that. So that was one of the things that in the years since I first started doing this experiment, like around 2013, to now, there have been series of epiphanies that I've had. So one of the first things to know is that when Deming would do this, it was part of a 4-day seminar. And it was usually something that was done over lunch. So as everybody is kind of like eating and enjoying some things, he has some people do this and they're kind of milling about and going through this, having a leisurely lunch. It doesn't just go scene and it's over. It then goes into debrief, which I'm about to go to right here, because you're bang on, you're right about variation. But the concept of variation is not something that's well understood. So I said at the beginning, I want to talk about prediction. And one of the keystones of understanding prediction, and one thing I think I've finally cottoned onto, because I've been in the Agile community now for a good number of years. And I've worked with XP, I've worked with Scrum, I've worked with Lean, and one thing that I think we don't understand is the impact of variation on our results. We actually go through and use a lot of math and a lot of statistics that presume some things that are more suited for understanding frames of data versus systems. We use the wrong methods, and this is what I'm going to show you right now. Now, we did have someone else who wanted to talk, but I want to get to this debrief fairly quickly.
Hey, just one comment.
Yeah.
I forgot about the debrief, so everything
Yeah.
I said, maybe that's the debrief, so. sorry.
Alexi, quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Martin's remarks. It's just, I often see a scaled version of Red Bead Experiment in real life, where instead of 10x developers, we have multiple awesome Agile teams. Sources of variability different from developers' work, but instead it's dependencies on all sorts of external vendors that are reliable delivery, conflicts over shared resources, dependencies on shared services that are managed capacity and uncertain SLAs, and all sorts of other things. Lots of variability affecting teams, yet questions are asked, and actually those teams go on hot and cold streaks. And then add the systems thinking archetype victory to the victor, enhancing those streaks. And then questions are asked, well, this Scrum Master is clearly more skilled than that. We should promote them. Maybe we should replace the Scrum Master on that team. Maybe we should debug the Scrum Master product owner relationship on that team, and so on, which are almost exactly the sort of conversation that went during this game. And so, a 2023 version of enhancements that Martin was suggested, they could basically include a sort of scaled Red Bead experiment. Now that we've got quite a lot of case study over the last 10 years, thanks to all the improved team level performance, we're basically getting into the next order of problems.
Martin, I think that we're going to have a session to work this out.
Chris, one more, and then we get the debrief.
Yes, one more. Sorry, I thought you rescinded. Sorry.
It's interesting. I mean, I want to go back to the part of the motivation piece, so that how teams move forward. Sometimes what I've noticed in the past that the motivation gets at let's look at the individual level, but not the social level of that individual. Like, families and things like that. People have been around long enough in the industry, remember the old times, the big party, Christmas party, renting the old Skydome, for people around, just to call it Skydome or Rogers Center.
Oh, yeah.
And then I remember teams were really motivated because they were connected, they were a family.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the debate, it wasn't about the regulations, about you are actually getting together as a family. My wife, my kids, everything is being part of the company per se to somehow. So that was a big motivator that was on the past. And then, believe it or not, I've seen that diminishing. You don't see those big parties anymore. You don't see those big events, family events. Maybe if you bring just yourself, you can bring your spouse, you can bring your kids. There's no family events anymore. So believe it or not, sometimes I found we are missing that connection beyond the individual as a part of the organization.
That's yes, thank you. So Deming has a very succinct part. So his last book, The New Economics, he says the most important job a manager has is to understand what's important to his people individually. So one of the things that I coach senior managers about, I didn't have to worry about this. The senior one that I just told you about who got her turn in the barrel. If you've been in Canada for a long enough time, there was a character on CBC called the King of Kensington. Remember that? So it was this gregarious guy who ran a convenience store in Kensington Market, and he knew everybody. And the thing is that when I would go and coach her, most of it was spent walking and talking. And then you'd go a few feet and she'd be talking to the janitor. And then she'd be talking, to somebody in maintenance and then somebody on a team. And I'd say, wow, are you working with them? I don't recall seeing them. Oh no, that was like 6 years ago. And I'm like, that's a gift. And they tried hammering that out of her. She felt that was a waste of time. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't teach that stuff. She just did it innately. She was genuinely concerned about the people that she worked with and wanted to get to know them. And as a result, her teams were fanatical about her. They would move with her. So it's very powerful. So if you are heading into management, that's a very important, succinct lesson. Care about the people you work with. Do what comes naturally and go and talk to them. understand what's going on in their lives, because that can help you actually understand whether you've got somebody in the correct role. Sometimes you'll see things that are beginning to crash and burn. And another famous Deming thing is if we look at people just in a distribution, we say this is the system, and then we've got somebody out over here. In typical management practice, that's a defect. What we have to look at is, did we put them in the wrong job? What other job could they possibly be doing? Did we set them adrift? Is it us? Is there something we could be doing? So you care about the people that are working with you. And it's not, and I want to be very certain, it's not a paternal familial relation. That's very different. That's another management anti-pattern, is to treat your direct reports as family. Don't do that. So as promised, we're going to use the Red Bead experiment to get some lessons from it. So one of the first things that you can do in understanding the data that is representative of your system, you can just start tracking it. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is, when we were over here, what do we actually notice about the data in the table itself? I've got red beads calculated along the bottom. I've got some averages, cumulative average down here at the bottom. So our cumulative average was for sprint 1, 11, 12.5, 8.67, 6.83 for an overall 9.8. What do we understand about that? Yeah, it's got ups and downs, right? So what about the performance of the developers themselves?
So when number of developers were increased, the performance improves, right? And the fourth stage.
It went 66, 75, 52, 41. But the individual developers themselves, how are they contributing? So if we look at this, see 12.5, well, we got 7 is below, which is good, right? We have to invert our thinking a little bit. But then we've got 18 really, really high.
I think the way it is designed has nothing to do with the performance.
Yep, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I am even considering it was, any person, whether they have the development background or the skill set, they would have had a similar random number.
Oh yeah, I'm not arguing the randomness. Right. It's actually looking at how you interpret or divinate anything out of that you're actually going to be able to use in leading a team or managing.
Because one of the things I noticed is that each sprint, 3 developers are above the average and 3 developers are
That was last session.
Yeah. So that's the thing about averages. So Jeff brought this up in his session, which I thought was kind of genius. He mentioned the book, The Flaw of Averages. And he said why you don't want to go to an executive with an estimate that's based on an average, because you could be very, 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 very wrong. You could be on the wrong side of that average. You could guess that. So the point here is that looking at columns of figures that you might be looking at in a spreadsheet doesn't actually help you get any insight.
Well, it can help you get the wrong answer.
Oh, yeah.
Because it looks like there is an improvement trend.
Yes. Oh, that's a good point, Gil. That's a good point. Yeah, it looks like we're improving on trend. So we might be, it wasn't good enough to save the company because the defect rate was still too high, but on trend. So this is where you might be protesting when you're leading some teams. You can say, we're doing the best that we can. Look, we've reduced defects. Sprint over sprint over sprint. One thing we aren't looking at is where the defects were coming from. So in the bucket, there was a distribution of red and white beads. Not once did we go and talk about where that was coming from. So your story about the defective data, man, like everybody's got one of those stories in their back pocket where you have no control over the data that's inbound. And in order to make it work with the system, you're having to do all kinds of reconciliations, normalizations. Sometimes the fields aren't in the appropriate places. Sometimes you've got dependencies in other places, and you're trying to do all this. Like
Scrubbing your data. How many people have scrubbed their data?
like everybody's got a scrubby data problem. So here's how you can turn this data into something more useful. We're going to create something called a process behavior chart. So a process behavior chart Deming in his time used to call it a statistical process control chart, and it was based on the work of Walter Schuhart, his mentor at Bell Labs in the 1920s. And so what Walter Schuhart was looking at trying to solve was, they had a problem. They were trying to make telephones, and they were trying to make them as identical as possible so to run out the defects. They didn't want to have so many defects happening. So he studied a way to be able to take the data that was coming from the systems and determine rather rapidly, mathematically, what is normal and what isn't. So this is how we're going to do this. So we've got our red beads in this column here. You can see that's all copied in. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to compute an average. And so you'll notice here, like when you look at our red bead counts, you can see that on trend, yeah, just as Gil was saying, it's going down. But it's a random pattern, right? It's up, it's down. We've got some extreme highs, we've got some extreme lows. So I've done that average. I'm going to show you a little trick that I picked up from Mark Graben. We want to put the average all the way down, because this is going to be called the center line. So I'm just going to say equal to the cell above, and then I'm just going to fill this range of cells. And I'm going to get, I've already kind of pre-baked this a little bit so you can see the center line. So we can see, much as Jeff said, 50% are above and 50% are below. Now this is already more than I see in a lot of organizations. We've got a lot of fancy dashboards and report cards and stuff, but already this is telling us more information, right? We're able to characteristically see how the system is working. But one thing that we don't know is this system, how would we characterize this system? We could use the word random, but we don't know if it's good random or bad random. How do we figure that out? Well, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to calculate the differences. We're going to calculate the moving range between succeeding pairs of values in that data. This is something that is not done, I assure you. And it's bloody marvelous because it gets into the order of the data itself. So we're going to do an absolute difference between two cells. Oops. All right, that makes sense. So we're going to go fill these cells. So we need to know this. This is something, again, that's not done in a lot of analysis. What ends up happening when we do traditional, regression to the mean analysis, chi-square, standard deviation, the data that is considered, or the data that is in the data itself, inherent in the data, gets discarded. We lose sequence, we lose order. Order is being preserved right now, and we're actually seeing the variation as it travels day by day by day. So this is a very important prerequisite here when you're constructing one of these charts. It's data that's presented over time, right? So this is time series data because it's very important to know when something goes haywire. Because that's the value of having this chart constructed, is you want to be able to say at what point in time, what were the events that preceded or succeeded a particular data point that we're looking at. So now we're going to calculate the average of the moving range. Pretty simple. And we're going to do the same trick that we did with the other average. We're going to say equal to the upper cell, and then we're just going to fill. So the average moving range, the average delta that travels across this range of data, we can say is about 4.13. That's an interesting bit of information. We're going to use that now to calculate the process limits. This is the magic. I'm going to go slow here because I want to make sure you see what I'm doing. It's equal to the average plus 3 times the average of the moving range. And I'm going to divide that by 1.128.
Why 3 times?
So it's going to go, what we are doing is we are estimating 3 sigma of dispersion, not standard deviations, 3 sigma of dispersion above the mean, right? So this is one of the things that Walter Schuhart observed, was he said, generally speaking, for a lot of system data, it's going to stay within 3 sigma units of dispersion above and below the mean. The idea here is that we are constructing a blunt force tool so that if we see any data points escape these limits, we know that that's a definite signal. This is an incredibly brute force tool. Like if you see a data point that goes above these lines, which you're going to see shortly, that's a definite signal of something to do, something to act on. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say, let's take the average minus 3 times MR bar divided by 1.128.
Where did you get that value from 1.128?
It is a mathematical constant, so it's used in this kind of statistical theory. So it is a scaling factor. And it's because we're using the moving range to calculate. So what this ends up being called is the location. And so we actually need a way to scale above and below the location that's traveling across here to show the limits. So dividing it by 1.128 is just a shortcut. This is not about mathematical precision. This is about good enough estimates so that you can begin to use the data immediately to look for signals. The whole point of this is not practicing math, it's looking for signals. So you can see that my lower process limit is showing a negative number here. We can't go lower than 1, so I'm going to call that 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to put the name. So this is how process behavior charts usually look. Data points are in blue, your center line, your mean is in green, your limits, your process limits are red. So we can see that our upper process limit is at 20.735. So if we were to have a data point, I've actually had this happen in doing the experiment, I've had somebody pull 21. I don't know how they did it, but they pulled 21. So don't feel bad. But what this tells us, now that we've got these guidelines in place, it tells us that this system, and this is really important, is stable and predictable. No data points are appearing outside of the limits. Questions so far? I don't want to go too fast here.
How many runs of it do you need to say that it's stable?
Like how many data points? So there's an expression in statistical theory that's called degrees of freedom. And it basically means, are the data points being used to their fullest capacity? And what ends up happening is for any given data set, you begin to notice the utility of the calculations begin to wane when you get beyond 30 data points. You could go as far as 40, but you can actually get started with as few as 5. And then you just keep calculating, you keep getting the data points, and you keep tracing it along.
Does it mean that if you do more iterations, then you get more accurate?
Diminishing returns for the amount.
Yeah. Right.
So so exactly. What ends up, the expression they use is the limits harden. So you may see them begin to attenuate to a certain level.
There's an interesting, for anyone who knows Troy McGinnis's work, he is a statistician and far smarter than I am. But my first introduction to him was him asking this exact question: how many data points do you need? And so the activity that he gave was, he gave us each a D100. So a die that rolls somewhere between 1 and 100. And he said, roll it. Now record it if it's the highest number or the lowest number. And so you record it, first roll was 17, the next roll is 22, the next roll is 84. By the time we hit 7, we stopped recording at a high and low because they were all within that range. And so after his was after about 7 data points with dice. I mean, this is a really simple thing. But there was no point going beyond about 7 data points. Now there probably is. He's way smarter. If you talk to a mathematician or a data scientist, they'll give you a different answer. But it was unbelievable how after 7 data points, every dice roll was somewhere between what we'd already rolled was the highest and lowest.
Now there's something very important to understand here. This pattern of variation that we're seeing, we could run this a number of times. So one of the things I can tell you, let me give you some information from behind, in the magician's closet, how the Red Bead experiment works. The distribution of beads in the bucket, we have 4,000. 80% are white, 20% are red. The paddle has 50 indentations. So we see that the cumulative average, if we go back, and we look at this, look at how our cumulative average was working. See along the bottom here, we got 11, 12.5, 8.67, 6.83 for an overall 9.8. So for the data that I've just given you, 4,000, 80-20 distribution, paddle with 50 indentations. What would you predict the cumulative average if we were to keep running the experiment? Say we had this room for another 3 weeks. We just, just keep doing it. Over and over and over again. What do you think that cumulative average would work out to be?
10.
Right? Everyone thinks 10. Wrong. Now, can you figure out why that might not be correct? What this is actually telling us? What assumption did you make when you said 10? Well, it's random, but how did you come up with the number 10?
20% of 50.
Exactly, right? So Deming had a really interesting observation about this. Not too many people did this and do this in the debrief, and I'm including it now. I never used to until I read about it years later. I'm like, oh, frick, of course. So when you look at the equipment that is being used here, then you would say, well, what's the rational basis for predicting that? Did you consider the paddle? Did you consider the beads? The interaction of the individual with the paddle and the beads. This is not just mathematical random sense. There's a difference. The only time it would be 10 is if there was an equal opportunity for any of the beads to be chosen at random. You get what I mean? There's none of that here. So he said the only way you could have accomplished this was to number each bead, put them into a fixed array, and have a list of tables, random numbers, and you were to draw the paddle, the beads, by random number. So you'd say ID 20, ID 42, etc., 2000, whatever. So I was really intrigued by that. So I actually wrote some Python to test it. So let's try this. This is really risky here. You know what happens when you try live coding. Fix up. Oh, baby.
I don't know, it worked on my machine.
Hush! Okay. So here's 240. Let's try another one, because you can see the average is about 10.6. Deming's prediction was it would come out to 10 at this point. Let's try another iteration. Because one thing you'll actually notice here, look at that one that's come out at 21. I get this every so often, and I don't know why, and I think it comes down to how Python, there's two different ways you can sample an array randomly. And I think I'm seeing artifacts of that happens that allows it to pick a number that's up around that range. And you can also see there's one down here at 2. I've noticed that you can actually when I run it through this code, I can hit 3 or fewer red beads almost regularly, like 2 or 3 times across this many iterations. So let me try again. Yep.
The limit represents low probability, not improbability. The limits represent very low probability above, not improbability. So I think that's what I explained before. So it's very unlikely.
Yes. Yeah, it's very unlikely given that's the power of it. Is that
I think that's another thing to notice. Even if it happens there, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily seen. Because it could be just random variation.
It could be.
Random variation.
Yeah. But I've got a couple of methods. I change them from time to time in the code to see if I can fool with it. And sometimes it works. It puts something out different. So here we can see this is a perfectly random control chart or a process behavior chart if we just choose the beads using random shuffle arrays. Bang on 10, upper of 18, lower of 2. The difference is really important to understand because this is what we've been getting bloody wrong.
So
when we measure like
this is where I'd say here we deal with what we call a very low, in fact, actually the binomial distribution, which is basically under the hood here. It's an ultra low variability distribution. And any real world distribution of time in process exhibits significantly wilder variability. And this exact effect that Chris is showing you, kind of like the way we see it in certain, like let's say, service delivery reviews, is that we look at 1 month performance data, time and process, average 10 days. Next month, 7 days. Next month, 14 days. And we are looking not at 30, but at pretty sizable data sets. Guess what? It's exactly the same process. Simply 3 different skewed samples of exactly the same process. And there are actually games involving rolling dice that actually help you reproduce that sort of variation. So actually kind of play the game with a different randomness device, except it produces higher variation.
Yep.
And we play it at like this table. They get an average delivery in 4 days. This table, they get average delivery in 8 days. But looking at completely identical problems. Looking through 2 different skewed samples. and the theoretical average may be somewhat like 6. So this is the sort of statistical effect you get with the real world.
So I want to show you something else that I want to use to make the case about using the wrong kind of techniques and tools to measure systems over something that is more random, something where you're sampling. So when Deming used to run this experiment, he used to calculate his process behavior chart or his statistical control chart using 3 standard deviations. And say, well, wait a minute, you just said that standard deviations were wrong. Deming would point out, standard deviations just fine because we're doing mechanical sampling. There are defects that are represented between bead to bead and with the paddle itself. It's appropriate to use standard deviations there because we're analyzing data that's in a frame. The whole difference when you start looking about how you're going to predict how a system is going to work in the future, remember this, empirical evidence is never complete. It's never complete. There's always another day, there's always another week, there is always another month, year, etc. So you're watching a stream of data going by, and you're making a best effort guess with the data that you've got. Does it represent a stable system or not? This is the secret sauce. Don't estimate an unstable system. An unstable system is by nature unpredictable. And I'm going to show you why this actually occurs. So everybody know Dan Bacanti? He wrote the book Actionable Agile Metrics. And a fantastic book, and I recommended it for years. I still do. I have some issues with Dan, though, because I'm giving his book a closer read. He talks about Deming, and he talks about variation, but then he applies some industrial-grade hand-wavium to these concepts. He says it takes high-level math and statistics. I just showed you how you can do that in like 5 minutes. Was that high-level math and statistics? It's something you can begin to use almost immediately. Now, it's putting a powerful tool in your hands, and you're going to have to learn how to use it appropriately. But you can begin to look at your data using that right away. So Dan's got this fantastic thing that you can connect up to your Jira or ticketing system and be able to get all kinds of wonderful charts. And one of them is this wonderful throughput histogram. So you can begin looking at, well, how does it all break down? And you can see here the magic, remember Jeff's session? He said 85% seems to be the golden zone. That's what everybody uses. 85% confidence interval. This is where we know that from this point backward, that represents how many items would be delivered in a day. So he says 7, had a throughput of 7 items. Here we can say 6, and it goes all the way down to none. And we often talk about this being the distribution that is characteristic of knowledge work. It always has this high end, and then it kind of goes out into a tail. Different distributions, but it can kind of look like that pattern with the long tail. Now, what Bacanti talks about in his book is all of these things over here, he calls them outliers. The nerve, that's data. That's very important to know about the system. But notice what's happened to the information. Remember I talked about order needing to be preserved, that when we were calculating the moving range? It's really important to know day by day by day, because that gives us the ability to have a precise place to look for answers. Where's all that there? It's gone, it's disordered. If you actually go in and look at each of these, you can actually see that some of the items, the work items that he's got, and I take it that this is sample data, but based on a real case, they're all, some of them are like 30 days old, 28 days old, 10. So they're coming across the finish line on a particular day, but they're much older. But order has been destroyed. But let me show you even further. I'm going to make another case. He's got this great ability here where you can just drag an analysis box. So I've chosen 30 days. Watch what happens as I start to move this. At this point, if we were trying to predict the system, we'd be going and saying, sir, we can deliver things in we can deliver 4 things per day or less. So that's our high water mark. Okay, well, let's base our estimates on that. Well, then it begins to change. Watch that 85% line as I move this. Oh, we can deliver 5 things now. 6. Oh, we're doing really well. 7. 7 seems to be the magic. Oh, 9 now. The system has changed. Oh, but we've dropped back down to 7. Imagine if we'd made the prediction based on 9. Now our ass is in the sling. And now we go here and it's dropped down to 5. This is really, really, really important. This is how we're going to get tripped up. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is one view of data, but you've got to understand this is using a statistical analysis technique that doesn't tell you how to improve the system. The process behavior chart does. So I ran an analysis on this too. Give me a second here. So I thought, God, that's curious. What happens if I go and put this on a process behavior chart? So that bottom chart, this one down here at the bottom, which is arguably the best one, because this is preserving the order of the data. I analyzed that. Here's what I got. Here are the signals I got. I used the first 30 days to represent the system. So we've got some really interesting results. In my case study, this happens. And it's got particular reasons. Can you think of particular reasons why we would have those signals presenting? And if you extend the limits out, these data points still stay up there. I've done that. Possibly, yeah.
End of sprint.
End of sprint. Rush. You know, because of the aging of the items, there was pressure to deliver them. What we don't know is the defect whiplash that came from it, right? So we shipped. We had the pressure to ship. We met the figures. So when I look at this, I say this is an unstable system. It's presenting with signals all over the place. We've got to stabilize it. Like if we want to stabilize it at those ranges where 12s and 14s become normal, you know, kind of like hover around the mean, and that's another conversation. But there's something going on. It gets curious. It's interesting. And at that point, you want to go in and say, what happened on these days? So let me show you how I applied this in what I did. So request comes in. This is 2019, December of 2019. A friend of mine has a company that's just over on King, and they produce knowledge content management systems for large organizations. And this one, he said that we're having a problem with is a big union, national union in the United States. He says, we got a problem. And so he says, I want you to talk to my director of delivery. And I talked to the director of delivery, and he says, we need to know why our teams aren't delivering on their commitments. Never heard that one before. Always have that conversation. We think it's because they aren't T-shaped enough. They're not collaborating or cooperating. That was the debate. That's what they were saying. Now, because I have an understanding of variation inside of the system, I almost immediately know that under the old style of management, what we call the prevailing style of management, you fault the person first, the system later. I teach fault the system first, then look at the person. What is the system that they're actually working in? So I started looking at the data. Throughput analysis, team A. Well, nothing really too interesting here. Looks pretty stable. I used a 25 data point baseline. The red diamonds represent the start of the sprint. So I was like, well, the variation's a little wide, but I could predict this system. I could predict, based on this 25 data points, that going forward, they'll accomplish between 0 and maybe up to 11 things. And I said, well, that's more information than you had, yesterday morning. Here's how you can use it almost immediately. But then I decided, well, let's go look at their work in process. So I started aggregating data. They used Azure DevOps. So it was a little painful to kind of extrapolate this, but I did. And then I saw this happen. Now, believe it or not, this is not actually that unusual. You'll see this pattern happen in a lot of organizations where the WIP limit is going to increase. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're doing a lot of small tasks, it can look like you're doing a lot of things, but it's rifling through. These teams, all remotely dislocated, geographically dislocated. One QA, so everything was funneling towards a single person on QA. But I'm doing some interesting techniques here. This was where I started looking at, I started around February. And I said, oh, this is pretty good. And then this happened. So this is where you shift the process limits. I was getting so many signals above this line here that I said, well, the variation has gone up. Work in process has increased. We're now looking at a range between 43 and 67 things any given day. But then we had a little outlier. We shifted again, and something went over. So a little secret to know about this that took me a little while to figure out is they suffered from a common problem. The team that can't say no. And more importantly, around this particular time, somewhere in here in this jump, they co-located a representative of the customer on their team who was in all of their planning meetings, in all of their sprint reviews. They weren't really doing Scrum. Let's just say they were. Basically, their nose in everything. And it was beginning to affect how they were planning. So when sprint planning came up, no problem. All they had to hear was a from customer, and that was it. And they were dying. But it gets worse. Then I started looking at, well,
Chris,
yep.
on the previous diagram, so is there correlation to what they plan versus what they deliver? Like here?
So what was happening, so I'll tip the hand a little bit more, the iterations were leaky. So what would happen is work would start, and actually I created a calculation I called stranded width, because I couldn't figure out what was going on. It seemed like no matter how hard they worked, it was like they were standing still. And what I began to notice is in certain strata or phases of delivery.
I'll go for a second.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, sir.
Don't worry.
The whip was increasing. They were allowing stuff to come in. So they were exceeding their commitments all the time. And then when they would actually cross the finish line, it would look like they were in stasis. Or they had actually gone up. So it never looked like they were getting ahead. So, next one, bugs fixed for sprint. This was a fun one. So I had to dig back. I went back into their archival data, and I found out they had this one well above the line, 90. And what they did on that particular day was, it's a very familiar thing, they decided to shut down for a sprint and fix bugs. Now, the director of software delivery told me about this. I pointed it out to him. He says, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. We thought that would work. And I said, well, how does it feel? Did it work? And he says, I don't know. So I showed him that chart. And I said, well, just like when the $20 was put down, it dropped. He said, well, I thought it did really well. And I said, yeah, but then you just went right back to what you were doing before. So you never changed anything. It never improved. It was the exact same system. So the very same way that, you know, it's the same bucket, the same beads, the same paddle. You could change people, but it didn't matter. You were going to get the exact same result. Percent defects per sprint. So this really revealed things. This was something that management did not have any insight into. They just knew that, you know, Dev was pretty skittish. QA was losing their mind. Lovely woman that was based here in Toronto. And they severely understaffed her. They saddled her with training people to help her, so she was working at well below capacity. Defects just accumulated. You can see there's the bug hunt, and then there's the didn't change a thing. So Team B is a whole lot better. I had some really good experience with the team lead for this team because they actually listened to advice. One of the things that I talked to them about was stop counting points, start counting things. Get rid of the points. They were stuck on points. So the customer had even given them a commitment. 90 points. We want you to deliver 90 points. Jeff has a fantastic story about how to meet that. You just inflate the point count, which is exactly what they did. You know, and it was causing them pain. But we can actually see here, 25 data point baseline. I drew the prediction. Stable and predictable except for that one. Guess what happened? They took things to heart a little bit too much, and the team lead was actually pitching in to try and get things done. So to get it through QA and to get it through user UAT and get it into production. So she was pushing really hard in order to get her throughput, and she ended up skewing the system, though she never achieved that again. It burned her out. So here's her whip analysis. Whip was going down. It's fantastic, but you can see there's a cascade pattern. She's still trying to deliver in iterations, right? So you got this stair-step effect. And you've got some really interesting points. They were exceptionally proud every step of the way. You see that 11, that 3, they were through the roof. The enthusiasm for what they were able to accomplish. It was working fantastic. Now let's look at defects. Defects, I mean, they're saddled with some of the same problem, right? They're fixing a lot of bugs. I pointed this one out here because this is a subtle signal. So when you get 6 or more data points that show up above or below the center line, that's a weak signal of potentially special cause variation. And in some cases, what I'll do is if I see enough data points that travel that way, I actually shift the limits because it looks like the system has transitioned to a new state. And so that's what I was kind of seeing, is that they were beginning to elevate. They were fixing more bugs. They were doing a great job. And they were doing much better on bugs as percent. They're no longer near the top. So let me scoot. So some things to take away. I really wanted to talk to you guys about management cheat codes, because that's what this is about. So I'm going to say it right here. I'm thinking of working on a book. The thing that's pulling me through is talking about cheat codes. And they are the things that allow you to see and operate in ways that no one else can because you're thinking differently. And so these are the top cheat codes. All management is prediction. We saw that happen in the Red Bead Experiment. Majority of performance belongs to the system, along with the problems. That changes your thinking. You're going to be directed in looking at problems in a much different way. Don't use sampling stats to predict how a system will work. Make sure the system is stable. If the system is stable, then we can say a distribution has been established. Now you could use that theoretically. Use process behavior charts. And of course, rate and rank systems, not people. Let's skip that. Who else in tech is talking about Deming? This guy. Everybody know the Phoenix Project. John Willis, he wrote the second follow-up book with Gene Kim. He has a podcast called The Profound Podcast where he has technical people all talking about their Deming journey. He was introduced by a lot of DevOps people about Deming. And he's got a book that's going to be coming out in the summer. And he's right now on a trip to Japan with Katie Anderson. Does anybody know who Katie Anderson is? Yep. So she is big in the lean field, and she has a mentor over in Japan. What's it? Isao Yoshino? Right? And she wrote a book. The name escapes me right now. But it's the lessons that he taught her. Yeah. If you want to make your own paddle, go to Thingiverse. You can 3D print the one that I've got. And I'm going to finish with this. If you want to learn more about this, I've had a long-term relationship with the Deming Institute. I've gotten to know a lot of the principal people within the organization. They've just released a new platform called Deming Next, which talks about this. It's very affordable. $4.99 US for a 1-year subscription. They have 550 modules, including the Red Bead Experiment, that teach you this theory, that make it practicable. And you can do it at your own speed, your own pace. The price drops. I think if you get more than 5 people, it drops to $3.99. And I'm looking at setting up an affiliate, like they'll co-brand with me. I'm thinking about doing that, and I might be able to get that nudged down a little bit more. But yeah, I would love to, if anybody wants to, I can share that over Zoom. I can show you how that actually works. Just hit me up. Because it's excellent. Like I've looked at the materials and I'm like, oh my God, I could give this to my customers. Just check in with them every week or so.
Sorry, just to clarify, Chris, when you say share, you mean you give us your login credentials? So
yeah, that's exactly what I meant, Chapman. That's exactly what I meant. So I encourage you to check that out as well. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time and patience.